to my video. My name is Asima Sulys Simanjuntak. My ID number 41931111045. I am colleague student from Mathematics Education Study Program 2019 at State University of Medan. Now, I want to explain about the chapter 9. It's about Euclid's concept development. The first, I want to explain about the Euclidean tradition. The subtopic Antiquity and the Middle Ages. Euclid's elements were probably written in the 3rd century BC, drawing together materials from a more ancient mathematical tradition, and certainly underwent several changes and modifications already during the Hellenistic age. A few fragments of it, moreover, circulated in the commentary to the elements written by Proclus, whose text enjoyed only a very limited circulation in the Middle Ages, but was rediscovered. The element of Euclid reappeared in the West in the first half of the 12th century, when Adelard of Bath translated into Latin and Arabic manuscript containing Al-Hajjaz translations. Already in the edition of John of Tinemoth, a few new principles were added the beginning of book 7 of the Elements, which were partly drawn from Annihilation. Okay, the next subtopic is the Renaissance in the meantime. Greek manuscripts had begun to arrive in Europe, and Bartolomeo Zambertti had translated the Elements into Latin directly from the Greek, thus opening a new era in the philological reception of the text. In 1533, Simon Granus published the Editio Principes of the Greek text. The latter edition, produced on the basis of the Greek text once again, proposed the ancient system of principles, which feature no arithmetical axioms nor any of the further corrections made by Campano. In any case, Granus's edition of the Greek text remains the only one available for a very long time, and most of the philological editions of Euclid in Latin or in modern language which were prepared in the following 2 centuries simply followed Granus's altered system of axioms and postulates. And the next topic, the 17th century. The 17th century was the most creative age in the invention and development of new principles for geometry and arithmetic, and in many respects the highest point of research into the foundations of mathematics in the early modern age. To this effect, several completely new systems of axioms were devised in order to ground elementary mathematics. On the other side of the political religious divide of the day, the Jansenist theologian Anthony Arnold worked an important new working of elementary mathematics, which also included by many new axioms and was followed by several editions loosely inspired by it. Okay, the next topic, the 18th century. In the 18th century, the foundational discussion on mathematics shift for the most part outside the scope of the elements. The elements were no longer regarded as the proper place for advancing a scientific discussion, but rather just as the most classical handbook for a basic schooling in mathematics. Of this modified approach was, on the one hand, a growing attention to pedagogical improvements in the teaching of elementary geometry, and thus a proliferation of simplified edition for students, and on the other hand, a renovated search for a more reliable and philologically accurate edition of the elements. It may be mentioned that the axiomalist attitude toward elementary geometry is well attested in religion as well, with John Leslie celebrated Elements of Geometry from 1809 and the famous Geometry Without Axioms, published by Peronet Thomson as late as 1833. Okay, next, number 2 is about axiom and postulates. The subtopics there are ancient principle groups 1 and 2. The Euclid'S list of 5 postulates and 5 combinations follow Henry's edition and finds its main foundation and justification in a number of comments made by ancient scholars who had in their hands edition of the elements with lengthier systems of principle, but claimed that some of them had been added in the centuries following Euclid. And the next subtopic, there are the theory of magnitudes, groups 3 and 4. These principles were often looked upon as the main axioms of the mathematics universals, that is to say, of a mathematical theory which aspired to encompass both geometry and arithmetic, or in other words, a theory of both continuous and discrete quantities. A number of them are especially connected with the arithmetical axioms and may in fact be conflict with them. The reason is that numbers themselves were often conceived of as collections of units, should therefore be integrated with the principle regarding sum, subtractions, and multiplication of magnitudes, which are also presented here. Next subtopic, there is the theory of proportion and the axiom of Archimedes, groups 5 and 6. The theory of proportion to be found in Book 5 of the Elements is probably that part of elementary mathematics which has undergone in the history of the Euclidean corpus the greatest amount of modification. It was entirely based on a complex system of definition, possibly conceived by Euclid'S, which support seriously textual carving during the Middle Ages, and which affect all the medieval Latin translation depending on Adelard or including Compano. The original meaning of the theory expounded in Book 5 of the Elements was referred during the Renaissance, and the restitution of Euclid on this topic was in fact the aim of many philological editions. And next, the principle of arithmetic, or group 7. As is well known, Euclid included no principle at all, except definition, in the arithmetical books of the Elements. The reason of his treating arithmetic differently from geometry in this way are hard to envisage precisely. Postulates were allowed in the geometrical books to answer a philosophical objection and were intended to warrant those auxiliary constructions which were needed in the proof. But since the arithmetical proofs were considered to have no need of any preparatory and to be susceptible of being carried out in a purely demonstrative way, no postulates were added in Book 7. Note, however, that a few proportion of this book require indeed that the mathematician is allowed to take or construct certain number from these few instances. The notion of an arithmetical postulate will later arise. And the next principle on space and situation, there's group 8. Many of them come from Francesco Patrizzi della Nuova Geometria and Pascal's Introduction alla Geometry. The importance of these two works consists in the claim that geometry should be regarded as the science of space, concept which represented a rather new epistemological position in the 16th and 17th century. As a consequence, spatial notions tended not to be represented in classical mathematical works and are not employed in the Elements. And next, principle of incidence and continuity, or groups 9 and 10. Dimensions considered are nonetheless central in the axioms of incidence, since these latter deal with the intersection of various geometrical features. The axioms in the category are among the most interesting of our survey and have survived in more intact forms into modern axiomatications, or such as Hilbert's principle of congruence and equality, or groups 12, 11 and 12. These axioms are concept with the quality of measure of different features and thus with the notion of congruence. The axioms in group 12 don't employ constrictions or displacement but rather establish abstract criteria for the equality of measure. Clearly, the divide between the two groups is rather artificial and looked at from an abstract point of view. They be considered to state very similar propositions. Nonetheless, their foundational strategies were clearly different in the early modern age, and I have therefore distinguished between them. And next, the parallel postulate, or group 13. The last group of principle lists a few alternatives to the parallel postulate which were concaved to replace the infamous Euclidean principle, or P5. It should be noted that the list is far from complete, as many attempts to demonstrate the Euclidean postulate were undertaken by making use of different definitions of parallel lines. The most famous of which is that two straight lines are parallel if they are equidistant, or a statement itself equivalent to the postulate if one assumes the existence of these equidistant lines. Such words are not included in our list of addition of the elements, and often offered still more and different statement equivalent to P5. The present list is thus quite insufficient even to sketch a short history of the attempts to prove the parallel postulate. Okay, I think that's all from me that I can explain about the topic Euclid's concept development. If I have a mistake, I apologize. I hope I will be better in the next chapter. If there are critique or suggestion, you can write them in the comment column. Hopefully, this explanation video is useful for you. Thank you for watching and see you next video.